Good evening and welcome to Midweek. On tonight's show, cults operating in Ireland. How safe are your children? We talk to a woman about her time in Limerick with the infamous cult, the Children of God. And we hear about the mental, physical and sexual abuse she suffered whilst in that cult. Back from the brink, we meet the parents of a newborn baby, Leisha, who beat the odds and survived after a life-saving operation. And Madonna's done it, Demi Moore's doing it, as have 1 in 5 Irish women over the age of 40 going out with a younger man. Well, we're looking at the phenomenon of so-called cougars. Stay with us. Cults, it's a word that sends shivers down the spine of most parents. The Children of God cult, in which orgies and sex between adults and children was considered the highest expression of love, operated here in Limerick in the 1990s. Well, tonight we're talking to a woman who was reared in Children of God communes across the world, including the one based here in Castleconnell. But before we talk to Juliana Burring, Michael Ryan takes a look at cults and sex in operation here in Ireland. I should warn viewers, it contains disturbing pictures and strong language.
When you hear the word cult, most people think of incidents like the 1993 Waco siege in Texas or the 2000 massacre in Uganda. There's none of those so-called doomsday or suicide cults here in Ireland. But like many other European countries, we do have our fair share of so-called new religious movements. One of the more well-known is Scientology, made popular by a number of Hollywood stars like John Travolta and Tom Cruise.
I think it's a privilege to call yourself a Scientologist, and it's something that you have to earn. And because a Scientologist does, he or she has the ability to create new and better realities and improve conditions. Being a Scientologist, you look at someone and you know absolutely that you can help them. Being a Scientologist, when you drive past an accident, it's not like anyone else. As you drive past, you know you have to do something about it because you know you're the only one that can really help.
Sunday World journalist Nicola Tallant has written about the Scientology movement here in Ireland, which is based on Dublin's Abbey Street.
The Church of Scientology will dispute it, but they are most definitely a dangerous, mind-bending cult. They offer recruits the secrets of the universe, which is the ultimate aim of joining the Church of Scientology. And those secrets are things like the ability to move in and out of your own body, to travel back and forward in time, and to become part of the army that Scientology believe they will be when the world ends. Scientology was certainly in Ireland during the 90s and throughout 2000. It probably made money, as everyone else did, on the back of the Celtic Tiger, because people would have had more money to hand over to them. But it hasn't properly taken off here. They claim to have thousands of members, but our estimation would be more along the 200, 300 mark, if even that.
The Scientologist traditional recruitment method is by using a personality test, but Nicola says they're now changing their tactics because that's become too well known.
So what they have been doing in the recent past is they've been trying to go into the schools. They've been sending letters out to the schools and looking to go in to give lectures to pupils. They've also shown up only this summer at an agricultural fair where they took out a stall. Mostly Church of Scientology will never call themselves that, they'll call themselves Dianetics.
Another movement, the London-based Church of Christ, first hit the headlines here in the 90s. Followers believe that only they will be saved, everyone else is going to hell. They're also expelled if they have a relationship with a non-member. Potential recruits are often approached around the area outside Trinity College.
They would start by asking you where you're from, and obviously you're the first day up, you're very vulnerable, you don't know exactly what's going on, and they're very happy and smiling, and of course that's very reassuring for someone who's just come up from the country. And so the next thing is they talk to them, and they get a lot of information. The person tends to spill the beans more than they meant to do because they're a bit kind of nervous, and so they tell stuff that they would normally not tell anybody because it's a stranger and they'll never see them again. And I've seen people taken up to a flat just up here in Dame Street, and about 10 hours later they run a bath in the apartment, and that person will be baptized into that group.
They recruited young people by offering them initially friendship and companionship, but very quickly parents found that their sons or daughters were actually being moved into communal houses. They were handing over quite a large amount of cash to the cult, and that they were changing personality completely. They were believing that nobody outside of the group, they couldn't have anything to do with their family or their friends. They were no longer visiting home. They were literally cutting their families out of their lives.
Christina Gallagher and her House of Prayer on Achill Island were featured on Midweek before Christmas. It seems passing on messages from the Virgin Mary has been a lucrative business for her. She now lives in a €4 million mansion.
Welcome to the Family International.
The Family, which used to be known as the Children of God, is just one of several other movements, including the Moonies and the Screamers, that have recruited here in Ireland. It claims to be a Christian fellowship active in over 90 countries and dedicated to sharing God's word and love with others. Followers believe they're living in the period known in the Bible as the last days, an era just preceding the return of Jesus Christ. Founded in California in 1968 by David Berg, allegations of child sexual abuse within the movement have persisted ever since. In the 70s and 80s, a practice known as flirty fishing encouraged female members to show God's love by having sex with potential converts, raising money in the process through prostitution. Sex between minors and adults was also encouraged until the mid-80s. When Berg died in 1994, his widow Karen Zerby became leader. This is her, wishing members a happy Christmas with her next husband Steve Kelly just a few weeks ago.
Christmas is a special and often busy time of year. It's also a time to remember and appreciate the important things in life, the things that never change and that will always be important, such as family, friendship, love for God and fellow man.
Zerby's son, Ricky Rodriguez, eventually denounced the movement and left in 2001, taking his own life 4 years later after stabbing a friend of his mother's to death. The woman had been involved in sexually abusing him as a child. After the murder-suicide caused by the trauma of his abuse, he released a video from beyond the grave to explain his actions.
This need that I have, this need, it's not a want, it's a fucking need, and I wish it wasn't, but it is. It's a need for revenge. It's a need for justice. Because I can't go on like this.
With movements like these still around in the Ireland of 2010, can you go to the Guards if a loved one gets caught up in one of them?
The Gardaí don't really keep statistics when it comes to cults. It's very difficult for them to investigate it. They have had complaints, but most of the time the people involved in the cults will be over 18, so it's up to themselves to make their decisions in life, and they can't, unless they get a formal complaint from a member, they can't investigate.
So what should worried parents tell their kids to do then if they're approached by a friendly face on the street?
These people have trained people for 20 years to stop people on the street. And so what I say to people is, when you're stopped by someone, take a deep breath for 10 minutes. Don't give any information to anybody, but take as much information as they give you. And the biggest help today in the modern world is a little word called Google.
Juliana, Michael touched on it there in the report, physical, emotional, mental abuse. The thing most people will find shocking was the sexual abuse with children, some as young as 3 years of age.
Yes, well, even younger. From the first moments of life, they would begin their sexual grooming. You know, babies, 1, 2, 3 years old. It started with his own son and daughter, David Berg's own son and daughter, and it was recorded in the child care manual, which all followers in the group were supposed to use as a guide of how to raise their children. And it was, you know, the basic, the adults touching, fondling, and then they would pair off the children together and teach them how to do it. And of course, all around the group was free sexual sharing. You know, off the back of the hippie era, everybody had sexual interaction with everybody, and this was considered normal. So from my earliest memories, we just see adults having sex all over